The utterance of her former name made Nyx panic. She turned and bolted, trying to run away as fast as her host could carry her. The headband slipped off her head, pulled away by the strange stallion's magic. Like snow in a bitter wind, the white coat she had been hiding behind blew away, revealing her natural, inky black color. Taking her headband, however, wasn't enough for the stallion. Nyx felt the vibrations through the catwalk, and heard the clatter of hooves against metal. It was worse than that, though. The stage manager had warned them a dozen times not to run on the catwalks. Meanwhile, this reader is about to call the police on a pedophile. Why? Because they were temporary. The whole stage was a temporary setup. Just like the temporary balcony Pinkie Pie had been so excited about. It was meant to stand in a hall of the castle just for Hearthwarming pageant and be taken down soon after. It wasn't meant to endure the same stress and punishment as the proper stage. Nyx felt the catwalk give a small jerk beneath her hooves. The catwalk's small length caused her pursuer to stumble, and the impact of his fall caused Nyx to trip and hit against the guardrail. Still, she got back to her hooves the fastest, and continued to run, but she could hear and feel the stallion resume his chase. His heavy footfalls sent wave after wave of vibration through the metal, further weakening what remained of the catwalk's supporting structure. Nyx rounded a corner, following the path of the suspended walkway. It was a rectangle in shape, and eventually would double back to the stairs, then led back down to the dressing area. That was where Nyx was running to, where she hoped she'd find somebody to help her. But the stallion was still coming. She could feel the catwalk shift as he rounded the corner right behind her, and, in her moment of panic, Nyx couldn't help but look back. That was a mistake. The stallion had raised the thing he had been carrying. Nyx heard a click, and her eyes were assaulted by a bright flash. She screamed and shut her eyes tight from the pain, but she also kept galloping. The edge of the catwalk came fast, and Nyx ran straight over the edge. Instinctively, when Nyx felt her hooves lose ground upon solid matter, she spread her wings, and her little wings flapped hard, trying to keep her aloft, but he didn't have yet the strength. Clanks and crashes of metal began to reverberate through the hall. A shout of "Jessie Tail!" filled the air, causing Twilight and her friends to scatter as lights, hung from the catwalk, began to drop on the stage. Cadence grabbed Shining Armor in her own magic and flew clear of the collapse. The audience watched in horror. The ponies operating the spotlights quickly brought their lights back up to full power and width, illuminating the stage. The catwalk came crashing to the stage like a meteor to the ground. It splintered the wood of the stage, creating a gaping hole and damaging some of the fine stone just beneath. The rail supporting the curtain, which it had shared some anchor points with the catwalk, snapped. The great, heavy sheets of red fabric fell down, covering the hunk of fallen metal, while also pulling down the wreaths and lights that decorated the stage exterior. It was a disaster that took seconds to occur, but seemed to happen in slow motion for the ponies watching from the audience. The dust began to settle, and a graveyard-like silence had fallen across the room. Every pony seemed to be holding their breaths, their minds trying to comprehend what they had just seen. The spotlights focused on the fallen catwalk, which was covered by stage curtains, like a blanket pulled over a pony in the hospital. Everything was still, everything was quiet, except for one thing. A bit of movement lingered on the stage. One of the spotlights focused on it. It was a rope, from which the wooden prop moon had begun hung. The rope was hanging back and forth, like a pendulum on the arm of a grandfather clock that was running slow. The spotlight moved down the rope, beginning to illuminate the moon that was miraculously still attached. Sitting on top of the moon, still clinging to the rope as terrified tears flowed from her eyes, was Nyx. "Oh, poor thing. Come here, Nyx." "Little Pip, I got it." Princess Luna slipped in from the hall where the reception had been held, where Celestia was trying to calm and reassure the ponies who had been in the audience. The performance hall, on the other hand, was under the full control of the royal guard. Medics were checking over every pony that had been on that stage. Thankfully, No pony was hurt except for one stallion that had been found resting amidst the wreckage of the catwalk. He was unconscious, banged up a knee, and was missing a tooth, but he had been taken to the castle's medical ward for treatment. Luna spoke a few kind words to the ponies she passed. Some of the actors and actresses were hugging each other for comfort, while others were clinging to the blankets provided by the guard. Many were trembling, their minds and bodies trying to process how dangerously close they had come to severe injury or even death. But none seemed more rattled than Twilight. She was near the stage, in what would have been the audience's front row, holding tight to Nyx, who was wrapped in a blanket and crying quietly. Twilight's friends, number one assistant, brother and sister-in-law sat nearby, but she seemed oblivious to them and the rest of the world around her. She just clung tightly to Nyx, and said the feeling would disappear if she let go for even a moment. "Twilight," Luna said gently, not wishing to startle her, "how are you and Nyx faring?" "We're both okay," she said, trying to quiet the tremor in her voice. "I got clear of the stage before the catwalk fell, and Nyx isn't hurt either." "That's good to hear," Luna said, though she could not bring herself to smile. "I am relieved neither of you was harmed, but I must ask, what happened?" "There was somebody who was chasing me on the catwalks," Nyx shouted, half cried. "Who?" "I don't know!" Luna lowered her head down and spoke in a calm, sweet voice, like a gentle breeze on a warm summer night. "It's okay, Nyx. I promise. You're safe now." Luna then glanced up at Twilight. "Would you mind if I took her for a moment? The gods need a statement, and I think it would be better for every pony if I was the one to speak to her." "Can I come with her?" Twilight asked. "Of course. In fact, I was going to have all your friends come. I've had some of the leftovers for the reception taken to a small servant break room that's nearby. I imagine every pony will feel much better once you've had a chance to eat and drink something, and it will let me come and get every pony's side of the story." Twilight nodded, unable to deny something sweet sounded very good at the moment. She let Nyx climb free of her embrace, before standing up herself. Twilight then rallied the rest of her friends. Soon, the group began to follow behind Luna, a departure that didn't go unnoticed. "Where are they going?" Shining asked. "Princess Luna probably just wanted to talk to them," Cadance replied, keeping her eyes shut as Shining used the washcloth to wipe away some of the Wendigo makeup from her face. Shining was still in full costume, but he had insisted on helping her first, before trying to get his own makeup off. It was a kind gesture Cadance appreciated. They had been the closest to the catwalk when it decided to fall, the closest to getting crushed. It was a little unsettling. "There, beautiful as ever," Shining said with a smile. "Thanks, honey. Here, let me clean your face now." Cadance took the washcloth from him and dipped it in a bowl of water Shining had fetched to facilitate the cleaning process. "Thank you," Shining said, only to push the rag away with a hoof. "But actually, I wanted to go look at something." "Look at what?" Shining stood up, stretching his legs a moment before turning and trotting toward the stage. "I'm not so sure this was an accident." Cadance couldn't help but arch an eyebrow. She climbed to her hose as well and followed Shining onto the stage. There were a few guards standing watch, and a few more poking around, investigating things. Technically, they were the only ones on the stage, but none of them spoke up against Shining armor or Cadance as he circled around the fallen catwalk. Shining craned his head back, using his horn to cast out a beam of light, and illuminating the ceiling of the stage, still places where the catwalk had been anchored. "Cadance, can you levitate me up there so I could get a closer look?" "Of course," she replied, before calling upon her own magic. Soon, Cadance was holding Shining up, letting him float around the rafters of the stage. He used the light from his horn to closely inspect many of the catwalk's anchor points. He didn't say anything as he worked, but then grounding frown on his face worried Cadance. 20 minutes later, Shining motioned to Cadance as he lowered him back down. "What did you find?" she asked. "A lot of the bolts that were securing the catwalk were stripped or torn out," Shining answered as he landed on the stage. "Well, that makes sense. It did fall down." "Yeah, but not by itself, Shining Armor said. Remember, during rehearsals, some of the stagehands were checking the catwalk for safety while we were waiting to go on. That catwalk was going to fall down just like that. They would have noticed something was wrong. No, I think the catwalk was torn down. But who would do that? Keynes couldn't help but ask. Who would even do that without somebody noticing? Nyx could, Sunny said coldly. Keynes' jaw fell open in shock at the words that had just come out of her husband's mouth. With a single swift step, she was up beside him, whispering as she scolded him. Shining! That is your niece you're talking about! No, she's not. Keynes glanced back, noticing a few of the other gods were within earshot. She then looked back at Shining, motioning silently for him to follow her. They stepped backstage to the dressing area. A few of the vanity mirrors had been cracked by the impact of the catwalk on the stage. Some makeup had been knocked to the floor. Still, it gave the couple the privacy Cadence felt they needed. Ignoring that last little comment you made, how in the world could have Nyx stripped the catwalk down? Cadence asked, pinning her host to face Armor. She could have done it the same way you would have, with her magic, Shining answered. An alicorn easily has enough strength to rip those bolts off. What magic? She had trouble lifting a napkin this morning! Cadence, don't buy into that routine. That filly is still Nightmare Moon, and she's been trying to sabotage this heartwarming since she got here. When did she try to sabotage anything? Oh, I don't know. There was that little screaming match she had with Princess' daughter at the banquet. Then Father's heartwarming logs went up in smoke after Nyx asked Twilight if she could go outside and burn that little stick she got from Lumberjack. Now this happens, almost killing you and ruining Princess Celestia's favorite tradition. This is crazy, Cadence said, lifting a hoof and resting on Shining's armor. That fire probably started because I didn't extinguish the wood right. Or because Nyx distracted you two and threw a piece of burning wood onto the log pile. Cadence opened her mouth to protest, only to remember Nyx had distracted them for a moment. She had heard something, made them look away from the grill. Cadence, however, shook her head. No, Nyx had heard something, the bell in the distance. This is crazy, she said firmly, looking back at Shining. Listen to yourself. Why would Nyx even want to ruin Heartswarming? To get us all under her spell again, Shining said firmly. When I saw Dr. Braintrust for a second time for my follow-up exam, I asked him if there was any way I could protect myself from being brainwashed again. He told me some counterspells, but he also told me how mind control spells work. It's not easy to influence somebody's mind. You have to be a magically talented unicorn to attempt most of them. Most spells have symptoms when you try to cast them on somebody who's magically sound, like the headaches I was getting because of the Changeling Queen. But Braintrust also said there are other spells, ones that work more subtly and don't require as much magic to cast. But to get them to work, Shining Armor continued, you have to break a pony.